When I practiced, I did many years of Zen practice before I was introduced to Vipassana. And when I was introduced to Vipassana in Southeast Asia, the way that it was primarily taught there was as an isolated practice, or in just a solid, single focus practice, only on mindfulness practice. And most of my teachers in Southeast Asia didn't talk much about loving kindness, metta, or equanimity, or sympathetic joy, or compassion. We were just primarily focusing on Vipassana. And I did long retreats in Asia, and I thought it was one of the secrets, a personal secret or kind of a secret about the practice of mindfulness, that it elicited all this joy and all this love. And I didn't think I could go to my teacher and tell him that I was sitting there with all these feelings of love, because, it was too, I don't know, it wasn't, this plain, matter-of-fact kind of reporting that was expected. And I remember once sometimes when we do mindfulness practice, the experience of impermanence becomes very, very strong. You see things arising and passing away. And I had experience, I'd bring my attention, my awareness on a particular object. As soon as I did that, it would vanish. And at some point, I had this experience that it wasn't simply I was glancing at something, but every time something arose, I would look at it with love. And the love would just kind of dissolve it back into love or something. And it was just really a delight to sit there with this, just day after day with all this love, kind of loving everything that arose and seeing it all dissolve back into love, and it was just great. And I remember telling a friend of mine who was at that retreat about this experience, and he kind of agreed with me. Oh, you shouldn't go tell the teacher about that. I was maybe indulging too much, or I don't know what. But I didn't get the message from my teacher that loving kindness and joy was actually an intimate part of the path. Even though I knew that he was teaching loving kindness to other people in a very systematic way, he was teaching people metta meditation. But there was no indication he was going to teach me that. And so I thought it was kind of like a secret, this thing about love and loving kindness and joy. And then I remember kind of coming back here to America and sitting long retreats here in America. I remember once, some of you might have been at Barrie, and there's a walking hall in front of the meditation hall, and walking back and forth, and feeling all this joy arise, and knowing that there are better places than joy in meditation. And so knowing that, kind of deeper places, knowing that, I thought the joy was a problem. And then I'd do walking meditation, trying to repress the joy, kind of hold it down. I mean, can you believe it? And I tried, trying really hard to keep the joy down, and I just ended up with a headache. And then finally, I kind of gave into it. And then once I kind of let myself go into it fully, actually, and it passed pretty quickly, and I was able to settle to what's considered to be maybe a little bit deeper place. But I think that joy and experiences of love, loving kindness, friendliness, very powerful states of friendliness, at times become an intimate part of the practice. And I say at times because we can't always expect that. Things change. We have our own unique individual personal path in the midst of the path of mindfulness and loving kindness, and we don't know how things are going to evolve and change, and what the sequence of opening might be for us. And but at some point or other, I think most of us, some point, will feel kind of a softening of the heart, tenderness towards ourselves and to the world around us, which translates into metta, loving kindness. Sometimes translates into joy. It's feeling joy in the joy of others, and sometimes you feel it in the form of compassion, feeling intimately the suffering around you and wanting to do something to alleviate it, or feeling moved to alleviate it. And sometimes we feel with the open-heartedness that can happen, the tenderness. That tenderness has a quality of being equanimous, great equanimity. And so also being, kind of, before I did Vipassana, I kind of stumbled on Vipassana, so I was kind of this diehard Zen student. And so in Zen, they never taught me, certainly, loving kindness practice. It was more like a samurai spirit of, toughing it out. And when I came back to practice in America after practicing in Asia, the American teachers taught a lot of loving kindness. As many of you know, on a regular Vipassana retreat, we often teach at least one guided loving kindness meditation each day. And when they first started doing that, on the retreats here in America, I said, what's this? This seems too artificial. It seems too, sugary. It seems too, well, mostly artificial was the feeling. I thought that mindfulness was about just being present for what's there. You don't want to artificially create something, especially something so sweet and, sugary or something. It seemed to me, like loving kindness. What was that? Even though I had a lot of experience of it in Asia, I didn't really have the words for it. I just felt like a lot of love and joy. So mostly what I did was I tuned my teachers out when they did the loving kindness exercises. And sometimes when I do this, when I now teach loving kindness on retreats, I tell people, you're welcome to tune me out. Because I kind of expect at least some of you, some people don't want to do it, like I didn't want to do it. But here today, everybody's here, I suppose, because they're into it. That's a different group. And so but then what happened was that at some point, just doing the mindfulness practice in its own course and own time, strong states of loving kindness would naturally arise. And then when the teachers came in to do the guided loving kindness meditation, I had a reference for it, and it was really close at hand. And so when they kind of started doing the phrases of loving kindness, it was right there to be awakened or to be evoked. And it became a very wonderful practice. And it didn't feel artificial anymore. It felt like just simply awakening something which was always there and allowing it to grow or develop or become pervasive. And so since that time, I've kind of been in love with loving kindness practice. I think it's really a great practice. I love loving kindness practice. I love mindfulness practice. I don't have as much experience with the other Brahma Viharas because they're not taught so much, and my own teachers didn't teach them very much. I want to say that, so I'm in love with all these things, and I kind of would like to, one of the reasons I love teaching is I love sharing something that I love. And sometimes I meet other people who love it, and then it's also quite wonderful. But in saying that, I think we all know how difficult lovers can be. So, if you're realistically engaged in both mindfulness practice and loving kindness practice, it has its trials too. So I'm happy to be here today, and I think that for many people who are here, all of you, and for the teachers who are coming, and for the staff, and for the people who dreamed of this event, the whole event is an expression of the Brahma Viharas, an expression of loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity. As I think all of you know, that the money for this is going to the scholarship fund, and we have two scholarship funds. We have a scholarship fund called Mudita, which is sympathetic joy, which is to share the practice with other people who are of low income, who can't really afford some of these retreats. And then the other is the Karuna scholarship, which is for people, which is the word for compassion, and it's for those people who have life-threatening illnesses or have chronic illnesses of some sort, so that they need some help to be able to come on retreat. And I think this very event here is the I don't know why you use the word brainchild, the heart child of Daniel Barnes, who I suspect has never asked. Anybody knows he ever asked for a Karuna scholarship himself? Probably never has. But he's would certainly qualify. He's a quadriplegic. So anyway, there's all these people who, so this, I think this very event is an expression of loving kindness and compassion. And it's nice to be here. I believe that the way that we often teach mindfulness, or maybe it's inherent in mindfulness itself, is that mindfulness appears to be a somewhat passive practice, and that it's mostly a receptive practice of allowing things to be and recognizing what's there. However, the very act of leaving ourselves alone, just seeing and being receptive of what's there, is so counter to the way we live our normal life. When we don't leave ourselves alone, there's a lot of judgment and criticism and planning and scheming and manipulating and all kinds of things. That leaving ourselves alone is actually a very radical thing to do, and just seeing very clearly what we are. And if we do that, if we leave ourselves alone and recognize clearly what's happening in our life, what happens is that the superfluous stuff, the anxious stuff that kind of often covers our life, begins settling away because it's not being supported or fueled anymore. And it's almost as if that under all that stuff, there's a heartfulness that is very pure and very beautiful, and that is the source for wonderful emotions like loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity. And there's a teaching in Buddhism, in Buddhist psychology, that mindfulness weakens the unwholesome, the unuseful states of mind that might occur to us. At the very same time, that very mindfulness, without manipulating or trying, will strengthen the wholesome aspects of our life. And a lot of it, I think, just comes from the fact we're leaving ourselves alone to let our heart become tender, and a tender heart will respond beautifully to the world around us, if we're willing to allow ourselves to be a little bit vulnerable. The word for mindfulness in Pali is sati, and we translate it into English as mindfulness usually. And I don't know, maybe it's because of the Western bias towards the mind, we use mindfulness as, there's nothing but mind in the word sati. The Chinese, when they translated the word sati into Chinese, they used these Chinese characters. And the Chinese characters for mindfulness is made up of two characters. And the top character is made up of the character for the now, or the present. And the bottom half of the character is made up of the character for heart. So it's the heart of the present. So that's a different way, I don't know how we want to say that in English. Heartfulness. So I think that just simply the leaving ourselves alone that happens in mindfulness and the very clear recognition of our life elicits, evokes, develops, cultivates an open heart. And I feel that one of the ways it does that is what we're cultivating in mindfulness practice is a form of awareness that doesn't exclude anything. There's nothing outside the field of awareness. If there's something outside of what you feel is appropriate to pay attention to, then you've created a division which will cause suffering, and which will limit the possibility of empathy and kindness and friendship to our whole world. And what mindfulness is doing is discovering a kind of awareness in which nothing is left outside. And that's kind of maybe a little bit a difficult concept sometimes to sink in, because it means we don't even leave outside some of the things that we consider to be negative or undesirable. We don't leave outside some of the horrible suffering in the world. We don't leave outside our own suffering. We don't leave outside our anger and our depression. But we find some way to hold it all in this all-inclusive awareness. And what you can do as you do mindfulness practice, if you find that you're suffering or feeling some discomfort, ask yourself, is there something that you left outside the field of awareness? But chances are that if you included everything, that the dukkha, the kind of suffering that Buddhism addresses, will not be really an issue. So developing an awareness that excludes nothing. So mindfulness, in a sense, is kind of maybe the passive side of practice, and the Brahma Viharas are the active side of practice. And just as my teachers in Asia didn't teach them very much, there's sometimes a tendency to give preferential attention to just mindfulness itself. And the Brahma-viharas is about our relationship we have with the world, with ourselves, with our friends. And while it might arise naturally in the context of mindfulness practice, we also have the option of not leaving it to chance, which means that we can actually cultivate it and practice it. And one of the values of doing a weekend like this and practicing these is so that we become more familiar with them. And if we're more familiar with them, we can recognize them when they arise in us, because sometimes these things can arise very subtly. And if there's a recognition there, the function of recognition and mindfulness is to strengthen the wholesome qualities. So if you can recognize your compassion when it's there, your sympathetic joy when it's there, it tends to strengthen those things and they become a bigger part of our life. Also, the Brahma-viharas provide the foundation for a creative, emotional, and also practical response to life. Many people in our society don't see a very wide range of ways to respond to the world around them. Some men, seem like the main kind of message they've gotten growing up is it's best to be aggressive in almost any situation. Some men fear not being aggressive, not being assertive, or being angry. And there's a whole other range of ways to be. A lot of people defend the value of anger in our culture. And I don't want to get into that question now. But whether it's useful or not, there's often better responses than anger. And becoming familiar with the four Brahma-viharas is becoming familiar with other possible responses to the world around us. The word vihara means abode, and it's a place where we can dwell. And the Brahma-vihara is a place where we can rest our life, rest our heart. And the Brahma refers to the supreme deity of the Buddhist Indian pantheon of deities. Some people are surprised to learn that Buddhism has deities, gods, because some people think it's kind of an atheistic religion. Buddhism has lots of gods, just that Buddhism tends not to think very highly of them. You kind of feel a little bit sorry for them. They have it pretty good, but I think by calling it Brahma, it also means kind of supreme or ultimate, or sometimes the word Brahma is just can almost be translated into English as spiritual, perhaps. You think? Maybe. And these Brahma-viharas sometimes are there's another Pali word for them. It translates into English as the boundless abodes, the unlimited bounds. But the boundless abodes because they help cut through all the divisions, all the barriers or boundaries between us and the rest of the world. All the divisions we make in the universe. And remember that mindfulness is awakening to a possible awareness which doesn't exclude anything, and in that sense is kind of a boundless awareness. In the same way, we can develop boundless loving kindness that also doesn't exclude anything, that includes everything. Boundless compassion and sympathetic joy. These Brahma-viharas, I think it's interesting the way that they're practiced. They are practiced usually by starting with oneself and directing loving kindness, joy, compassion, equanimity about or towards oneself. Because it's not so much we're not denying ourselves or our qualities in doing this practice, but rather we often start with ourselves, appreciating ourselves, and then from that we expand out and universalize that experience. And we don't and it's done sequentially, and you first do it to yourself, and then you do it to people who you feel close to, like to benefactors, and to friends, maybe families, people who are it's going to be easy to do it, who you want to do it for. And then you try to develop these things for neutral people who you kind of don't have any feelings one way or the other for. And then you do it, then you kind of let it and then you kind of keep universalizing it, and you move it into people who are difficult. And then you even go further into people who are your enemies. And then once you've kind of done that really well, then you begin doing it kind of blanketly to all kinds of people, all men, all women, all people in Woodacre, all people in California, all kinds of categories, difficult people, good people, all paramedics. You can send it to them, it's very nice, they probably could use it. All politicians. And one of the paradoxes of Buddhism, I don't think it's a paradox from a Buddhist point of view, but maybe from a Western point of view, is that Buddhism talks a lot about no self. And that teaching of no self tends to maybe resonate with the kind of Western teachings of self-effacement. And so we get kind of confused about what this teaching of no self is about. But the paradox is that at the same time that Buddhism teaches about no self, it also teaches that one of the very virtuous things you can do, one of the very useful things you can do, is to rejoice in your own good qualities. And I think for some people in the West, rejoicing in your own good qualities seems like an odd thing to do. It maybe even seems kind of egotistical. You're supposed to kind of be humble and not really, rejoice in your own qualities. But rejoicing in your own good qualities is considered to be a very useful thing to do in Buddhist practice. So we start with ourselves. And a distinction can be made between, and the Buddhist path, I think, is a very emotional path. Many Westerners, when they first had contact with Buddhism, thought that it was a very dry, unemotional, austere, ascetic, world-renouncing path. And if you read some of the books about Buddhism from 100 years ago, that's kind of the impression you got. And who wants to be part of that? But if you do Buddhist practice, you see it's actually a practice which is, I think, involves a lot of emotion. And I would say even passion at times. There's words that can be translated as some of our definitions of passion. The word like samvega could be a passion or zeal for practice. And as we practice, I think it becomes emotional. The emotions become very, very strong. Loving kindness becomes strong, joy becomes strong, and equanimity, which is a very powerful emotion, I would say, also becomes very powerful the more we do this practice. And a distinction maybe can be made between self-centered emotions and connecting emotions. And the emotions which tend to cause problems are those which are self-centered. We really have to do with us being self-centered. And when we're self-centered, in the way I'm using the word now, it tends to lessen our intimate connection with others around us. And then there are emotions which are connecting emotions, which allow us to develop more intimacy and wholesome connection with the world around us. And so loving kindness, sympathetic joy, compassion, equanimity are such emotions. So there's 4 of us who are going to teach these 4 foundations of mindfulness. And this afternoon, Sylvia is going to come and to do compassion. No, she's going to do equanimity. And then tomorrow morning, Joanna Macy is going to do sympathetic joy. And then in the afternoon, Jack's going to come and do compassion. And there was someone who was concerned about the order being messed up. And maybe it was, maybe it's messed up, but who's to say what the order is? I mentioned this to Jack yesterday, and he said, "Oh, but the Buddha, he almost never taught all 4 of these together. He just taught them each of them separately. So who knows what order it's supposed to be in?" There is a kind of logic that starts with loving kindness and develops and ends in equanimity. But human minds are so wonderful. You can always find logic for almost anything we do. So I'm sure, if I thought for a moment, I could create the right logic for why we're doing the sequence we are today. But the real logic is that Sylvia agreed to do this afternoon and couldn't, and so there was a switch. in order so she could still make it. Also, I should point out, since so we don't want to take this thing about the order too dogmatically, be kind of religious fundamentalists about the order. It's most scholars who study this kinds of stuff and feel or think or conclude that these Brahma Viharas were originally not Buddhist. They're pre-Buddhist, and they're just part of the Indian religious environment. And so the Buddha Buddha didn't invent a religion out of nothing. He just incorporated many elements from the religion of his time, and the religion of his times have all, most of them kind of more or less kind of faded away, maybe, or something had changed enough. So a lot of things survived mostly in Buddhism, and so we think, oh, it's Buddhism. It's just good sense. It's just so it's not a particularly Buddhist thing, the Brahma Viharas. So. Many of you know that in Theravadan Buddhism, the preeminent emotion that's cultivated in practice is loving kindness. And you can go to Thailand and Southeast Asia, and there are monks and nuns there who specialize in practicing loving kindness, and they're known for the field of loving kindness that's around them. And people will go in pilgrimage to them just because of their loving kindness. Isn't that great? We have cultural heroes who, because they have so much loving kindness. It's a little bit different than the cultural heroes that we have. And in Mahayana Buddhism, the preeminent emotion or attitude is that of compassion. And so I don't want to compare, which one's better. It doesn't make any sense to me to talk about that. They're just two different ways, emphases where people begin. But part of the reason in Theravadan Buddhism, I believe, that loving kindness is preeminent, is taught first and taught so much, is that loving kindness is the foundation for the other three Brahma Viharas. That what loving kindness is a open-hearted, an open-heartedness to the world around us. It's an open-hearted wish of well-wishing, wishing others to be well and to be happy, wishing ourselves to be happy and wishing others to be happy. That arises out of kind of an open-heartedness. The other three are the responses of this open-hearted loving kindness to different conditions in the world. So we cultivate loving kindness as a foundation, and then when loving kindness, this open-heartedness, meets different situations, it takes the form of sympathetic joy, compassion, and equanimity. So when we're in the presence of someone who has a lot of joy and happiness, has succeeded in something, then the open-hearted and loving kind of response is to share in their joy. If we feel envious in their joy and their success, then the heart is kind of closed. But if we're unenvious, then an open-hearted will share in that joy and that delight. If we meet the suffering of someone else, then I think an open-hearted response is to feel somehow empathetically that suffering, and then to naturally want to wish that person to be alleviated from their suffering, or wish to do something about it. So loving kindness is kind of often considered a foundation. In Mahayana, the compassion is often is a preeminent emotion, because compassion is a very strong motivating factor in our practice. That it's a lot. If you really feel compassion for the world and for suffering the world, it's a lot easier to sustain a spiritual practice, a Buddhist practice, for a whole lifetime or for lifetimes. That if you're not doing it for others, if your practice isn't for others, which it often is for the first, often when people first start practicing, we just do it for ourselves. We're kind of having a hard time, you want some help, or it's kind of, we do it for more personal reasons, and that's, I think, quite appropriate. But at some point, if you're doing it only for yourself, I think it's very hard to sustain a religious practice. And the only thing that will sustain it over a whole lifetime is at some point you feel that this practice also is you doing it for other people. So because of that, and because the Mahayana are in it for the long haul, they put a lot of focus on compassion, developing compassion, to keep the motivation going for lifetime after lifetime. However, Sylvia lately has been saying that equanimity is the foundation for all the others. And she's all kind of, you know Sylvia, she gets all enthusiastic. And so she's all enthusiastic about equanimity being the source of them all. And she called me first and said, well, I switch with her and then she said, well, equanimity should be first after all. And I couldn't switch. But I think there's some truth to what she's saying. And in that equanimity is what arises very much out of mindfulness practice. And equanimity is this kind of willingness to keep the heart open without letting the heart kind of hook on to different things that go through it, or get attached to different things that go through it, or close off to different things that go through it. Equanimity is that smooth evenness that receives everything without... maybe this is trite to say it this way, but maybe it gives the idea. It's kind of like equanimity is like having a Teflon heart. Not that things slide off exactly, but you can receive everything fully, completely, and intimately. But there's no fear or aversion or attachment where any of that stuff becomes a problem. So equanimity is very important. The more equanimity you have, the more open-mindedness we have, I think that naturally the other emotions will arise. But you'll have to hear what Sylvia has to say this afternoon. Someone who is unknown wrote, "We live in a world torn between wanting to listen to the sound of a flower growing and wanting to ignore the sound of the sky falling. By sometimes being sensitive to the first process, we acquire the energy necessary to prevent the second." So we cultivate loving kindness, mindfulness, and as we do that, we also cultivate the capacity to feel compassion and be present, to be witnesses for the sky falling in the world. Maybe I feel like I'm talking too much. So maybe we should soon start with some practice. So take a few deep breaths, closing your eyes. And it's nice at the beginning of a sitting to take these deep breaths and use the exhalation to settle into your body. And then breathing normally. Just feel your body, the way your body presents itself to you right now. Feeling your body arise out of your seat, out of your cushion, upright in the air. And then also you can scan through your body, and if there are any muscles, kind of larger muscles which are easy to relax, you can soften them. Sometimes you can start with your forehead, softening and relaxing. The eyes, And if it's easy, you can soften the jaw. And if it's simple to do so, you can soften and relax the shoulders, allowing them to be. And sometimes it's possible to relax the stomach and the abdomen. And then sit here, feeling the stillness of the body, and within the body, as part of the body, become aware of your breathing. And for the next little while, maintain a connection between your awareness and your breath, allowing your breath to move across, to move into your awareness. Letting go of your thoughts and concerns, maintaining the connection between awareness and the breath, the connection of the breath with the body. Allowing the breath to be just the way it is. And as you sense and feel the breath in your body, do you feel the breath, the breathing, more deep inside your body or more in the surface? Do you feel more connected with either the in-breath or the out-breath? Or are you evenly connected with both? let go of your connection with your breath. See if you can bring to mind some time in your life when you felt particularly happy and content. See if you can remember a particular event, a place, a time. And maybe in your mind's eye, remember what the situation, the place looked like. Kind of roam around the landscape or the room. Recalling the people who might have been there, if they were there. Perhaps you can remember the smells. Remember how you felt. Perhaps you can remember how your body felt. The feeling of energy, the feeling in your face, in your heart. And if it's at all possible, see if you can allow some of those feelings of the memory to abide within your body now, within your heart. And then gently let go of the memory and simply feel your body. Feel how your body and your heart is right now. And then bring your attention to rest in the area around your heart. And feeling yourself as someone who's capable of feeling happiness. So for someone who has a right to feel happiness. Extend feelings of loving kindness. Extend whatever feelings of well-wishing or friendliness as you can to yourself. Perhaps allowing the breath to move in and out through the heart. And then you can repeat silently to yourself the following phrases of loving kindness. And what's important in loving kindness practice is not so much the evoking of loving kindness, but connecting to the intention of wishing yourself well. May I be happy. May I be free from physical harm. May I dwell at ease in this body. I be free from mental harm. May I dwell at ease in this mind. May I be free of worry and anxiety. I think in part loving kindness, the possibility of feeling loving kindness or the intention of it is something which is very close at hand. And sometimes it only takes not changing the situation, but just simply changing our perspective we have on the situation. Seeing ourselves in a different light, seeing other people in a different light, seeing ourselves as maybe one human among, how many are we now? 5 billion or 2 billion or many billion? One among many sometimes. For some people it can be overwhelming to have that image, feel like ants. But for some people it can be really inspiring because you don't take yourself quite as serious, but you're part of this wonderful phenomena of human beings which exist on this earth. And as one of many, it's easy often to have kindness or feel compassion towards the other, all the others, but not in this direction. But if you feel like you're one of those many others, just one of the many kinds of others, then it'll make sometimes a little bit easier to have it for oneself. So let's do another sitting. So the basic idea in a posture for sitting is to take a posture where you can be alert, but also somewhat at ease. So it usually means sitting up straight. And then take again some deep breaths, settling into your body. And you can use sometimes the first few deeper breaths as a way of arriving here, connecting to your body, allowing your energies or the impulses within you to settle and be here rather than in lots of different thoughts and concerns. And then breathing normally. Once again, simply feel how you are right now. Your body, your mood, your feelings. Sense them from the inside. Without any idea that there's right or wrong ways of feeling. Just feel how you are. Allowing it to be okay to be as you are right now. And as a way of being kind to yourself, if it's easy and simple, you can relax your body. Relax your shoulders and your stomach. Relax the chest. Relax the neck, the face, the eyes. And then bring to mind some aspect of yourself, some quality or aspect or some difficulty or anything at all that you feel might benefit from some loving kindness or deserve some loving kindness from yourself. Some wonderful quality perhaps that you have, or some difficult situation. And if you can think of such a situation, such quality, and if this instruction makes sense, is there some place generally in the body where that quality is located? And if you can feel a location for it, or whether you can't, direct some loving kindness to that part of yourself, some appreciation. May this quality be happy, may it be peaceful, may it be at ease. And then sitting here quietly, feel your breathing coming in and out, feeling your breath perhaps in your chest, or imagining the breath comes in and out through the chest center. And as you breathe in feelings of intentions of loving kindness, of warmth, of fullness. And then as you breathe out peacefulness, calmness, a letting be-ness. And if you want, you can say simple words, labels. As you breathe in, you can say metta or love. And as you breathe out, you can say peacefulness or calmness. Letting yourself be just the way you are. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in loving kindness. Breathing out calmness.